electric bill was because they've each got their own little meter.
To REC, and REC bills them directly?
No, it all comes to the county.
We quit doing that, and they had to go to REC and have the meter put in and pay the fee, and then they billed them directly. It was just the original ones that we were billing at the whenever their lease came up, of what the average cost was for power the prior year, because you can't make money off of power. It has to be exactly the same. And then I would go out and read the meters on those and keep them each. I had worksheets in here and multiply it by the utility rate for that year. And then when the lease came in, that was added to their yearly lease. If they had a 25-year lease, I sent them a bill for their power. And we got away from it because technically REC doesn't want us
reading the meters.
Yeah, or selling
Reselling
electricity.
power.
And so that's what we went back to. And it was, I know Johnson and the ones as you drive in, I can't think of Shane, and there's another one there. They had to go to REC.
McAllister.
McAllister, I think the big hangar, he was doing we don't charge them power because they get a bill from REC.
What is Bobby sending bills for every year?
The ones that had the original ones when Vern and then went back, and Vern put in the meters and it came off the main meter. But every May I'd go out there and read meters and figure out everybody's usage for the past year. And if you don't do that, if you don't keep track of each one of them, like Culp's building, one year it was over $2,000 or $3,000. Well, his heated pads weren't turning off. And if you don't read their meters, and it's on our main thing, we owe it.
Also, there's a per meter charge just for having the service.
But I took the whole bill and divided by the usage. Okay. So they got that all put in, because you shouldn't be subsidizing meter or hangars, and you can't. So, but I don't know how many there are now back on and added to the main meter.
Well, that's something that either we have a record of here in theory, or Jay Sorensen, the manager, should be able to provide that information.
And that's his
job.
Where's my list? I'll try to talk to Jay and find out who else is electrical. Because I mean, I guess you guys can make the decision, but it's sort of it's going to get down the road that it's probably best that I know everywhere else, even if you're in the subdivision or anything else, you put your own meter in and you pay your nothing.
Well, do we want to delay a decision on this lease to make sure we've covered?
No, I think this lease covers it. I took off on a tangent because on this lease there's a blank, and it just says pay, that you'll pay this much, and so that can be changed based on all of that. And so I think this lease is fine, and I apologize for my tangent.
Okay, I have some questions on the lease, though, and I've expressed them to Ryan earlier. One is, if they remain in occupancy after the expiration of the lease, we treat it as a year-to-year rental. So that basically gives them an indefinite.
You're referring to paragraph 8, I assume?
I don't have it in front of me.
If upon expiration of this lease, lessee shall remain in possession of the premises without any express agreement as to such continued possession, lessee may be regarded as a tenant from year to year until such time as a new lease is entered into by the parties. Lessee shall pay yearly rental fee equivalent to the yearly rental fee provided in section 3 of this lease. If lessee has not substantially completed construction of a hangar within the initial 1-year term of this lease, lessor may give notice to vacate. If lessee does not exercise his option to renew for an additional 25-year period, lessor may give written notice to vacate. Upon receipt of a notice to vacate, lessee shall have reasonable time to remove any improvements to the tract which belong to lessee. Such reasonable time shall not exceed 90 days. You're referring to that paragraph?
I'm referring to the first part of that paragraph,
where it says lessee may be regarded as a tenant from year to year until such time as a new lease is entered into by the parties. So, and your concern is that, sorry, can you tell me?
Well, my concern is it converts it to a year-to-year lease. It makes it open-ended, subject to dispute. the operative word being may instead of will. May means the county, it sounds like the county may or may not have that option, but it also could be that the lessee may or may not have that option.
Sure. Would you be more comfortable with this draft stating that lessee may be regarded as a tenant from year to year at lessor's discretion?
Again, it gets into the arbitrary nature of it. Either they are or they aren't. And we don't really want to exercise that kind of discretion necessarily. Because
Although, I guess maybe where I see an issue with that is if you say, okay, your lease is ended, too bad, but yet if somebody drops the ball, the county drops the ball, whatever, does that mean that that person is automatically kicked out? And even if it was the county that didn't recognize that lease was over, I think you need to have some amount of leniency in there.
well, you don't want to write a contract that basically says the county might screw up, so this is what we're going to do. We have a responsibility there. But if you were to rent your house out to somebody for a year's lease, and you can have language in there that says at the end of this lease, it's reverts. Oh, in fact, it's even a statute that reverts to month to month. Okay, if we were to say it goes to month to month or whatever, that would be one thing, because month to month then assumes that you have the right as the landlord to terminate the lease based on a month to month rental. I don't know. These aren't commercial. They're just vague. They're not covered under those normal statutes. And so I would like to say that if we're going to have year-to-year leases or we're going to have 25-year leases, pick one or the other, or pick them both and then define them as one or the other. I may want to come out there at least for a year, for instance. And we don't have any provision in that. And what the county ended up with one hangar, didn't we, recently?
Yeah.
Okay. What if I wanted to lease that from the county for the summer? How do we accommodate that? Or Jay was suggesting that we give it to some outfit rent free. And none of that's covered in this particular document or anticipated. And those are the kinds of things that come up. We've got the issue with Coralie. And we have nothing, basically. And I think they were concerned about trying to accommodate her, but that's developing policy based on one individual circumstance. And we're trying to get away from that. So we don't have a water situation like we have on the one and others.
So I agree it leaves some discretion to the board. And I don't think it's necessarily a problem for the board as the lessor to have that discretion, as long as in exercising that discretion, there can't be a colorable argument that it's arbitrary and capricious discretion that's being exercised. If you would like to have more concrete evidence or concrete language as to specifically what happens at the expiration of the lease, then I think you could probably say, it already says, if upon the expiration of the lease, lessee shall remain in possession of the premises without any express agreement as to such continued possession, then you could put language in there that basically the lease will terminate upon expiration, and you already have that caveat built in there. You're approaching the end of your lease. You need to have some express agreement from the lessor that, it will either allow you to do whatever within a reasonable period of time, renew and give you, a new date by which to renew by, or whatever you're going to come up with. But I think maybe if that would be your inclination, so that you have a concrete, this will happen upon the expiration of the lease, we can put that in there. If termination is what makes sense, and you start a new lease agreement, then that's what you do.
Well, okay, and I really don't want to belabor this. That's what I was hoping we could maybe move it down the road if there's going to be enough questions about it. I don't think that the guys have really thought through this at the airport advisory board. You got input from Dusty, you got it from Jay. I've got my thing. But I'm thinking, there's a couple of things I was thinking about. One is the termination of the lease. Okay, there's that. And then it goes to year. It says, at least under the terms of section 3, the rate, is that correct? Does that mean that we raise the rate? We can raise the rate under the terms of that section no more than 2.5 times
2.5 times, correct.
at the end of that lease?
Correct.
So in theory, we could say it's a $50 a month lease for the year, $600 a year, typically, right now.
Right.
Okay, and so we can say the new lease rates are going to be $100 a month. That would fall within that category, and they would be agreeing to pay that $100 a month if they stayed past the end of their lease.
Because it essentially would be a new lease. Yes.
But that's only for the 25-year lease, not the year-to-year lease, is it?
Well, that's the question, because we don't have a year-to-year lease. We have a 25-year.
We have a 25-year lease with a year-to-year, each year
Oh,
payment,
you don't do.
or a 25-year lease with
Where you
a
pay it up front.
one payment.
So it's ill-defined, and I think we need to make sure it's clearly defined. And it's a ground lease. It's not the personal property, which the hangar itself is personal property, even though it's affixed to the real estate. Okay. Then we go to that. The question you had, another section was they have 90 days to remove it.
Yeah.
And the question then was, what if they don't?
Right. Now, I think that was Suzanne's question is when I spoke with Suzanne was, correct me if I'm paraphrasing this incorrectly, but thought it was kind of odd that there'd be a requirement to remove property, including, but not limited to the hangar itself. And, I think you might want that. You might want to keep the hangar on the property if somebody just abandons the lease altogether and then it's somehow left owing the county money or whatever. And it would be abandoned property that the county might assume at some point. It might also just be a garbage hangar and a junk building that could be an expense to the county, and you probably want to have that person bear the expense of removing
You
it.
have a way of collecting.
Right.
Why do we write language in there that if the hangar is not removed and they haven't sold it to somebody, all that stuff, it's not, the lease is not renewed. The hangar becomes county property, or the county may elect to take the property or have it torn down at the expense of the owner, because we do have some junkers out there. They're going to become more so over time.
Just as a reminder.
Unless they become historical artifacts.
Well, you also have to know if it's that one hangar that is, well, now Kent Romagers, that first one you should drive in, it's in the glide slope, and as long as it's standing and usable, the
Wayward.
CDOT?
Yeah, CDOT or Aviation Department said they would leave that, but if it's got adobe walls and some other things, if it becomes that they want to take it down and replace it, it can't be.
Okay, it has to be a clear zone. And therefore his lot has no value as a hangar lease at that point.
Yeah, you couldn't rent it out to somebody else or sell it to somebody else. I mean, you can sell it to somebody else.
Is there a way that we can go ahead and make the changes to the wording and approve that today? Because there are two people that are wanting to get leases. And I know one of them wants to start building before it becomes winter.
I'd like to throw some out. The other day, just out of happenstance, I was talking with JJ. And JJ brought up the fact that airport's not been replatted.
Yes, it has.
She doesn't have a new plat.
Apparently it was replatted after Price, that they went back and redid, at least the surveyor went out and redid something.
It hasn't been filed.
Yeah, she doesn't have anything.
She has to take out of the clerk recorder. So if the county or whoever, the airport board or whoever didn't refile it, she can't pick it up.
The surveyor said he went out and resurveyed it.
Well,
And so I don't know where the documents got to from that, but he did go back out and resurvey it after the Price lease,
well,
or after the variance.
and part of the problem with a lot of this stuff is that we have, I don't know who all is involved with what as far as rewriting this stuff, because you got Jay putting in comments, Suzanne's putting in comments and stuff. And I'm not on the board, so I'm not pretending to know anything about this, but One thing I do know is JJ doesn't have the replat. And that's a big deal, because right now, the places behind your hangar, those are the big deal.
So that has to be resolved, and,
I'm sorry, it may be done. I'm not arguing with that. She just doesn't have it, so.
surveyed isn't platted. Two different things. We keep making decisions based on somebody's urgency. Part of the reason we have to do that is we don't have solid plans on any of this, so we keep having to knee-jerk our way through the process. It's what I see. These hangar leases make me uncomfortable because they set us up for arguments later on sometimes. We've got issues like a guy with an RV stored in his hangar. Okay, I don't know if he's moved or not, but it was out there. Okay, is that allowed or not? Okay, his RV and his junk car collection, is that allowed or not? Those things need to be defined. Otherwise, you have no teeth. You have no way to enforce this stuff. And then you just go out there and you have the airport board either cozying up to somebody they like or not.
Is
And we
that
keep trying to
somewhere-
make special accommodations.
Operating procedures of the airport that are referenced in this contract, or?
I don't know that I've ever seen the operating procedures.
We've got an operating document, but again, thrown together. I mean, it's probably under that operating document that we ended up with some of the problems we had. And so I would suggest, not that we don't allow these people to get started in building before winter, but to my knowledge, this board hasn't seen any applications for those leases. Have you seen it?
I haven't.
I haven't seen it. This board has to approve them unless we delegate that to the administrator or to the airport manager. But right now, as my understanding, we approve. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean,
And nobody's applied to us.
But they are approved after the recommendation from the airport board, correct?
Maybe.
We had problems back, and I know the only regulations we had is one point we had to have them show that they had an airplane or a pilot's license, because we had so many people coming in and saying, oh, it's so cheap out there. Instead of getting me a storage bin or anything else, this is gonna be my storage bin. So you had to have an airplane or a pilot's license, that you would have a plane under you, if you borrowed or rented a plane or something and flew in here for the summer or a weekend, you had to show and give the tail number of that plane. The other thing we had was, okay, are we going to get into the fact that Creek had a lot of fights over their hangars and what could be going into it or not? We said, as long as you have a plane and a lot of people will fly up, leave their plane. If they have an RV in it, then they go do something with the RV. They put the RV back and then go out there. I think you can manage it. You don't want a business started, because we had a business, auto repair business going out there, and those kind of things. So I think, you don't have to say, you can't put your snowmobile or you can't put your whatever in the hangar, because we're going to come check on it. You have to have a plane only and nothing else. So I think those are the things, the basic guidelines. Those are the things we got in troubles with. So I think, I don't know if you do it in the contract or you have it, here's the rules or the
It's gotta
rules
be in
of
the lease, 'cause that's what
operation
they're
of,
signing.
once you get the lease, you will abide to, just like a rental lease or anything, you're allowed to do this and this and this. I don't know.
We can address the airplane versus motorhome versus snowmobile thing by saying primary use. Now, what happens if I decide, since it's so cheap out there to rent this land, because we did that, I'm going to build a spec hangar. And I want to lease it out for
profit?
people. Huh?
For profit.
Absolutely a profit. I want to lease it out because these guys come in, they want to park their airplane up there, they don't want it out in the snow. And so I'm going to lease this out as covered airplane. Can I do that?
Never had that question.
Well,
But it's a real issue.
number 11 here is acknowledgement of receipt of airport operating procedures. The lessee acknowledges receipt of a current copy of the operating procedures. I'm thinking that would be something that would be in the operating procedures.
Do we have a copy? And do we have time to review it now?
I don't have a copy of the operating procedures. I've never seen that. That was Dusty's suggestion. As far as the actual application itself, All I understand is that the applicant submitted that and Bobby has a copy of the application. I have no idea whether the Airport Advisory Board has reviewed the application and given a specific position, made a specific recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. So I don't know about any of that. I'm happy to amend this lease agreement however necessary to attach operating procedures referenced herein as an exhibit. I just need direction from this board. I put this together having only had conversation with Suzanne and John, and then sending a copy of this to Jay and to Tom to get any input. So I realize that's not the best course of action to go about doing this, but it was really the only means I had to put this together. So if there's additional guidance in terms of putting a document together that's going to be something that the board is willing to approve, then I'm ready to accept that now. I've already made 2 additional comments on this document, but you tell me where your problem areas are and I'll come up with a way to address them.
I don't have any problem areas.
Well, obviously I've expressed some concerns there. And I really think it goes back to the advisory board and this board taking a hard look at what this airport is facing. Because you're being paid to sort out some problems that were left by previous boards. And I don't want to continue that practice. And it's been ad hoc. Somebody wants a favor, somebody wants to do this, we're going to split them, and we just kind of do it. We don't even know for sure what land use has to say about splitting these lots, or are we replatting, or what are we doing? There's allegedly a survey out there. There's no plat that we're aware of been filed. How can we make any decisions? What is our rental rate going to be? If we're going to start doing these large lots because the aircraft are getting bigger, we need to do that now. Or we're going to sit there when he comes in and we go, how big's your airplane? This is like, how big's your dog? You know, and if we're going to charge based on square foot, it needs to be in this document. It needs to be on a chart. It says this is what we're charging. I have no idea what these hangar sizes are proposed to be. These people are coming, filling out applications. We have no guidance.
And I don't think, the square footage and whatever calculation you're going to come up with to determine the rate doesn't have to be in the lease, but you probably want to have some policy, if we don't already, that dictates that it's going to be X number of dollars per square foot of the lot.
And we're going to need it attached to the lease. If this is the line, this is an $800 a year lot versus a $600 a year lot. Somehow it's going to have to be referenced in here, or we need to know that lot 32 is an $800 a year lot. But that needs to be somewhere in the document. Otherwise, 10 years from now, you're going to go through, well, this guy in $600 a year, and how big was his lot?
I mean, those things can be maintained, again, by way of policy or in records that the administrator or whoever's managing that keeps, to say that, this is the price per lot, whatever, for each specific lot. And I think obviously having a plat that works makes sense. I also think that to the extent that the Airport Advisory Board does function on an ad hoc basis, there probably needs to be better reporting in terms of what the recommendations from the airport board are to the Board of County Commissioners. When you have the advisory board for I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, for land use, whatever that's called.
Commission.
Thank you. The Planning Commission. Thank you. They make a formal recommendation that's usually relayed by Dixie in terms of this is what they considered and this is the recommendation. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. You would know better than I do. I haven't seen that come from Jay or Tom or anybody else in terms of these particular issues. I don't know how they've been handled in the past, but to the extent that it is intended as an advisory board, I think that information needs to come. I know, John, you show up to the meetings when you're able to and you kind of function in that capacity, but I don't necessarily think that it would be appropriate for a board member to come back and say, this is what the advisory board recommended. A commissioner to come back and say that. I think that needs to either come from Jay or somebody. Yeah, in terms of a formal recommendation.
Well, right now it's kind of like the tourism board that you sit on and some of these others. You report back to this board, you're our deal. We have a manager out there. Quite frankly, he should come in just like Dixie does and report. But the way this was set up, whenever I got put on that slot, was I was the liaison between the advisory board and this board. That was what I was told to do. Okay. Now, is it legal? Sure. They can do that. They're going to assign commissioners to do whatever.
They can do whatever the heck they want because there's no
Right.
statutory authority for an advisory board for an airport anyway.
Right.
Talking about the lease rate is I think it would be better to not put it on the contract. And that way you don't have to change the contract every time you want to change it. But because they are 25-year contracts, is you might have a contract that's signed this year and your lease rate is $600 and next year it goes up. And then you just go by
That
it.
should be a form and it's approved that this is the new rate as of this date.
Right.
And then you keep it in a running
Right, you
file.
just
And
keep
in
a
this,
running
there's
file.
there's a blank.
And that if
Well,
you
there
get
would be a
where it
blank
says-
on here, the lease
right.
rate. I'm not suggesting that we type, that we print these with rates because we don't know which size lot, what hangar space or anything else. But we also have the issue of people sell hangars. And then that person may or may not come back in and try to get the lease on the ground.
And that's addressed in here.
Okay, well, it's kind of addressed, but we talk about no businesses in the hangars. I don't know if I've got to reread the lease agreement. Well, what about Ron Ecord and his aircraft repair business? How do we accommodate that? That's something you want on the airport, but you may not want a motorcycle shop down there.
Well, the guy that had the automotive repair shop out there was pretty busy. It took up a lot of space, so.
Yeah,
Well, it does say that the lease premises shall be limited to aircraft storage, maintenance, and other uses.
that is for the guy that has the lease, the person that has the lease. I can work on my airplane in there. I can store my airplane in there. That's typically the understanding on hangar wrecks, at least the ones I've been involved in the past. But we had a problem that's not anticipated in this lease where the guy had all those airplanes parked out there behind Edwards.
But he didn't have any lease.
He
Yeah.
owns the land, so he doesn't have to have a lease.
No, this was the other guy. This was the guy that
Oh,
worked
he had them
there.
parked all
Eagle
over.
Air
That
Band.
was one area. They finally pushed him off the transient parking ramp. These are derelict airplanes. Junkers that had to fly in a fair permit, and he pushed them all down there onto airport property.
But that's why you have a manager to take care of it when he's pulling it in, isn't it? Or is it just-
Supposedly,
Well, that
but
was-
they
That
were kinda
happened
too-
right around the time we hired a
Yeah,
manager.
and so I think I think that's some of the things you need. to
But
be
our
clear with.
transient parking ramp right now is being used in part by Ron Ecord to park the overflow aircraft that he's working on. I don't have a problem with it personally, but that's the kind of thing you can get into.
So can I get a copy? I'll reach out to Jay and get a copy of the operating procedures because I don't know how many of these things that we're discussing
Already
may actually
addressed.
be
Yeah.
or maybe addressed in
You
that
don't
operating
have a
procedure.
copy of that?
But if we're not ready to take action on this today, then I've got additional comments. If you think of others, if we can just, maybe if you can email them to me, then I can incorporate them and we'll just keep this on. I know that there is, I don't want to just rush this along for the sake of accomplishing this, even if we don't have a formal recommendation from the advisory board. But I also don't want to be the cause of this being unduly delayed. So I will help get this accomplished as much as possible, but it doesn't sound like you're ready to do anything today.
Well, part of it is Suzanne brought up some things they did in the past, which make perfect sense, but it doesn't sound like we've been adhering to those procedures since.
Well, and I don't know if the commissioners went ahead and said, yeah, you can do this if they'd already had.
We don't know.
commissioners approval.
But that's the type of thing that we want to prevent in the future, and we've already got it covered, and there's already a procedure, we're just not following it. We just need to make sure that everybody's aware of it. And rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and to custom tailor this to accommodate a couple of folks. It's our bad for not having this taken care of, but the advisory board needs to get more involved in it. And the next thing that's going to come down is the airport, the aerobatic practice area. And that one's going to be potentially a real cat fight. Okay. And so we've got a couple, 3 things that we need to be thinking about from this end.
All right. The
So-
only other thing that I had was the national popular vote. We didn't already take that up, did we?
Well, no, that's the next thing on the list. So this has gotten tabled or what? You need more time on it, Ryan? Is that good enough on the lease?
Well, I don't have the I don't even know what additional language you guys are wanting at this point in time. So I'm gonna have to figure out what the operating procedures say, try to incorporate some of the changes that you discussed today and see if that's gonna be workable from the board's perspective.
Okay. So we'll move that's not, can't be resolved today.
I don't see how it can realistically.
Okay. Then the resolution concerning national popular vote, that was sent out. Other counties have signed this. Somebody want to make a motion on
Yeah,
it?
I'd like to.
Wait, I would like to make a comment here. I was somewhat surprised to see this on here, because usually we have the discussion before deciding to do a resolution, and that the resolution encompasses the comments of our discussion. And so this is something that I'm not aware that we've ever even talked about.
Probably haven't. Gene, you're the, see, I don't know, you got this from Darius, was it?
I
Or?
actually got, this is Rose from Grand Junction.
Mhm.
She's the one that sponsored this bill and she sent it out to everybody. It was sent out to all the counties.
So it's a
I-
standardized
I
resolution.
got it. This resolution is actually copied from what was given to Darius Allen and we just used it with our information to put this together. What she's trying to do is she's trying to get this set so she can do a map of the state with all the counties that are actually signed off on it, so she can take it to the governor's office to say, look, this is what we've got. All the counties are supporting this or whatever. When I did this with Darius, I assumed that everybody had seen some part of this.
And I don't have a problem with that. It's just usually before we initiate a resolution, we have the discussion about our feelings about it, so the resolution can encompass our discussion.
I don't know if that's a necessarily required procedure.
I'm not saying it's necessarily required, but it just is a little bit more.
Unless you want to have a work session before the resolution, or delay the resolutions by a meeting or something. But anyhow, I saw you asked to have it put on the agenda. It was placed on the agenda. You talked to Wright about it, I think, right? Didn't he draft it? I don't know. I was out of the loop on that. Is it fine? Commissioner wants to have it on there.
I was just trying to help people think put on there because I know I know that if Rose is on this and she's right back and behind this, that it's something we need to be involved in. We were one of the few counties left in the state that hadn't signed off on it. So when Darius had this ready, I just jumped on getting it done to get on here. So I mean, if we need to put it off and have a work session on it, we can do that.
I don't have a problem with the
didn't see a reason
concept.
to.
I don't have a problem with the resolution. I just think the process that it went through was maybe we should have heard about it before we just get a resolution. That's just my comment.
Well, we can always vote or not vote, but I'll accept a motion to approve. That was for review and or approve on here. So we've reviewed it. I have. I'll accept a motion to approve the resolution concerning national popular vote.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
And I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other
I don't have a
discussion?
problem with the concept. I just think that the process was
Any other discussion
maybe
on it?
not proper.
Okay, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, carries. All right. Okay, that gets us through that. Suzanne.
No, if
Right.
Ryan needs to get going and stuff, most of my stuff is just information and some, well, there might be one thing I'll need to have Ryan do before you go, you're ready to go to executive session.
Yeah, but we can take up whatever.
Well, as I mentioned, if
Well-
that's okay.
There were the other two resolutions that we added to the agenda here, the one for, to put Jean on. Maintenance?
We've already done that.
Did we do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, did we move them up? Okay,
Yeah,
I
we
just
did
had
those
them
under
written.
the general
And then
business.
Hire
Yeah.
me.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. My
So-
mistake.
Yeah, we're not giving Suzanne a chance to back out. So
I
I
wrote them on my
figured
agenda here and then I,
So Ryan, you're good. Stick around for a bit while we
Yeah,
go through.
I'll
Suzanne.
go through anything I think Ryan needs to be put into, and he might need to look at this, but I looked through it's the annual agreement with CIC. I understand from Bobby and Debbie that CIC hasn't been put on an official notice right now because they didn't want and to all of a sudden say we aren't giving you any support and stuff. So I understand that the formal notice or anything to them, they aren't aware of it. What I understand, we were paid through the year, and in the contract, the contract that was signed at the first of the year has a how to terminate the contract, and what I'm not an attorney, but I'll tell you, I read it and it looked like we had to give them 90 days notice, written notice to the address up here. I guess I need you to say, Brian, review this, write the letter and get it signed, because 90 days puts it to the 1st of October. And it's better probably to give them a couple weeks so there's no chance that they can come back. I did see something in the real fast that they might, if it's agreeable, return some of our money. But at this point in time, there's not that much time left, and we're still trying to get information from them. If we have a problem with getting stuff moved over, history is mainly what we have from CIC to Tyler. So that's.
And I guess my question would be is if I remember from previous CIC contracts, is the 90 days is like kind of like the treasurer did, is we took it on and then the treasurer was like, no, I do not want this. And we had 90 days to say, no, we're refusing it. And so I don't know, because I think there's a non-appropriation clause if you.
Yeah, but the thing about non-appropriation clauses is you can fail to appropriate funds, but if the funds are available from any other source, like if you have them in your reserves,
they can come after it.
And you've already paid for another one to come in, so you can't very well say, we aren't going to pay you because we don't have any money when you spend it.
Okay.
And I think a lot of this, because we've paid out the equipment, and this is just I think the software and the maintenance, the agreement.
The licensing and the support.
Yeah, the support hotlines and
Right.
stuff. And I think it's only, what was it, $17,000. But you don't want to be locked into another year, $17,000 if they're not going to be there. So.
Question I have, because what I'm hearing now is not what I heard last spring on this maintenance contract or the support contract.
Well, that's why.
What I heard last spring is we weren't paid through the end of the year. So my question is, are we or are we not?
I believe we are.
But we can answer the question.
Yeah, I can find out for sure and then get with Ryan on that. But I just wanted to get it into the pipeline so that if we had a deadline date, we got it done. And I'll put it to my
with
list.
the board's approval, I'll review this. And then if necessary, be prepared to send a written, basically termination notice. What I would like to do is follow up by way of email, or it sounds like we're going to be meeting between now and then, and just let the board know what I found out with respect to this contract. But just as long as I have to go ahead to review it and
well,
put that on my to-do
I don't
list.
want to be as dead. I heard specifically because we were planning on terminating sometime this fall.
Mhm.
Okay. Then later I heard, like a month and a half ago, we're paid through the end of the year, which is different information. So I just asking for confirmation on that.
And then when I asked them there, they said, yes, it's been paid full, but I won't verify because I don't want to mislead you guys. Then everybody assumes they did and didn't do it.
Right.
So that's the only thing.
So you need a board approval on that? You want to vote, Brian, or just consensus?
Nope, just as long as you give me that direction, and it sounds like that's a consensus
Go
of the
for
board, then
Okay.
This, I just need you to authorize Bobby as assistant to the county administrator to assign titles. If we, the clerk's office has to have on record who's the only person that can sign a vehicle title over. And since most of the time to run you guys down or whatever happens, it's been easier that the administrator was the person that was given to Cindy. That's all it went. So the sheriff couldn't come in, or Randy couldn't come in on their vehicle and say, I want to transfer this to so and so. Only one person. It's a safety measure.
Any discussion on this?
No.
Give me a motion so I can sign it.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion to a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Then, let me see, I'm trying to go through things that we need.
Pass that down.
it up with anything else.
A lot of these things is just general information. I guess, well, Brian's here too. As far as I'm concerned, unless you tell me differently, the Baxter Hill BLM lease, right now, I can't find any, they billed us yearly up to a couple of years ago for the lease. I can't find the lease. You said leave it lie. I talked to Patrick again. He says, yeah, physically, we could probably get it done, but it's going to be a lot of dollars and it could be a lot of injuries to staff and that. So I want consensus that I can file this and forget about it unless we get a letter from BLM.
So what we were gonna do is, because BLM had reached, and I didn't mean to just interrupt and
That's
step on anyone, so but BLM had reached out to the county recently and said, we've stopped billing you through September 30th for this. I think the lease is long since expired, but they still, when we initially let them know it was our intention to remove the equipment, we just didn't know the means by which that would be accomplished, because Road and Bridge didn't feel that it was safe for their people to do it. And Patrick came in and explained why. And I think it was right before Trish's departure, the board had given direction to the administrator to try to find somebody, put it out for bid, is like what I'm trying to say is, to remove the equipment. And if there's a private contractor who will do that and accept the whatever risks associated with the removal of this equipment. And so I don't know, I'm guessing, because that would have been probably the week prior to Trish's departure, I'm guessing that didn't go anywhere, but we do kind of still have that September 30th.
I actually think it might have been the same day.
Okay.
The other part of that is, and I asked for this information, who put up the tower and communication equipment? It's my understanding it was a TV organization. Now, why the county had the lease on the ground on behalf of the TV organization, I don't know. But I've seen no documentation that says the county had any ownership or responsibility for the shacks and the towers.
And that sort of came around. There was a San Luis or a South Fork TV Association, which was Lawrence Fleming and a couple of the guys up there who have all passed. And at one point in time, they said, we can't maintain, we don't have any money. So that was about the time lottery money came in. Translation towers was allowed as a expense under conservation trust. So they said, you take over the operation. I never saw a deed or anything else. A lot of that equipment up there goes back to Swinehart. I think Crow might have had equipment up there. South Fork Sanitation Association, TV Association put most of it up. We had one grant for a brand new tower up there. I don't know who put the buildings up. I don't know if we have the right, how to even get a hold of these people to say, you better go get your stuff off, because, we just kept the FCC leases in place and paid the electricity and any repairs.
Okay, so the question is it our responsibility to remove this stuff, or is it the BLM's responsibility?
Well,
It's an expired lease.
actually, that's probably not something I want to answer in an open meeting, but I have thoughts on that.
Okay, and I'm not arguing one way or the other.
No.
It's a question.
It was just a thing, I was trying to clean off my desk and make sure that I wasn't letting things fall apart. So I just want to ask you on that. We're going to talk about the CARES Act. Okay. The other thing, got this done. Let's see. Okay, I think everything else is general information and guidance from the board that probably will not involve Ryan. I don't think he wants to know what my workloads I'm supposed to be ordered to do day in, day out. So that's all I need for right now.
Okay. Then, Ryan, is it appropriate at this point to adjourn the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of going into, is it going to be an executive session or is it a conference with the county attorney for specific legal advice?
It would be an executive session, which would include a conference with the county attorney for the purpose of receiving specific legal advice pursuant to 246402-4B. And I think it would be appropriate for there to be a motion and a second before we do so.
Okay,
I'd move that we move into executive session as previously referenced.
motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we will terminate this meeting, shut off the recordings. Thank you for joining us on Zoom.